Okay, so I'm Alan Holland. I'm CEO and founder of Keelvar, and I'm going to go into a little bit about our story. And our story actually starts with my parents' startup story. My parents, they formed a startup 25 years ago in the chemicals industry, but their startup nearly went bust, and they nearly went bust due to what I would call market abuses. So there was a monopoly in play in their industry, and that's the reason he got into it, in fact, because he was buying chemicals for a dairy company he worked with, and he found that they were getting very bad value for money. They were paying 3 times the price for chemicals than their neighbours in the UK. There was a monopoly in play. He saw this as an opportunity. It was 1988 when times were pretty tough in Ireland. Nancy and Ronald were best friends. Def Leppard was top of the charts. My dad was working in this factory, and he was a bit annoyed by the fact that there was this monopolist who was just abusing the situation. So he set up his own company. It was called Acorn Water, and he slashed price. He said this isn't fair. He got his first customer contract with the company he just left. So he had his first customer. Everything was going well. He was getting larger and larger market share. The more chemicals he could make, he had more customers willing to sign him up straight away because they were annoyed at the monopolist. But people have short memories. The buyers of these chemicals, a few years into it, the previous monopolist responded, and he slashed prices. He more than halved prices. And sometimes customers don't, they have short memories and they forget. There isn't much loyalty, and he started losing market share pretty quickly. So I was young, I suppose, and I was looking at this situation. It caused terrible stress and angst, and here was a supplier to government and dairy and various sectors, and he was looking at huge debts and winding up the company. I was a PhD student at the time, and I was actually in the computer science department. You would think that's nothing to do with economics or market design, but it actually has everything to do with market design, because when you talk to the buyers about what their problems were, my dad wanted to say to them things like, look, if you give me this contract in Dublin, and if I get this contract in Cork, I'll be sending lorries up to Dublin collecting ingredient chemicals that go into making the aluminium sulfate I'm making for you. I can give you discounts if I get certain combinations of contracts. Will you take this offer? The buyers were saying, no, that sounds a bit too complicated for me. They actually had a problem evaluating complex offers. So buyers, it turns out, were refusing complex bids, even though those bids made for a more efficient market. They didn't have the tools available to work this out. So I started looking at, okay, how can we resolve this problem? The area of mechanism design and economics was very popular amongst computer scientists several years back. It was called algorithmic mechanism design or computational mechanism design. You saw government selling telecom spectrum in much smarter ways, but nobody in the procurement space was using smarter mechanisms for buying. So I suppose this was the root of the problem my parents' company was suffering from. So I went about focusing on this particular area and presented a solution to the Competition Authority in Ireland, and as luck would have it, they got it. The Competition Authority, I suppose these were the experts. They could see, all right, this is the way we'll set up this competition for water treatment chemicals in this case. And hey presto, he started to get market share back again, and the situation stabilised. So I left that area and said, okay, that's that problem solved. And I ran a few trials with our local city council, and they loved it. They actually had the similar sort of problems for vehicle fleet. They were running vehicle fleet procurement exercise at the time. But I left it alone. But they came back to me. So a few years later, Lehman in Ireland with Anglo-Irish Bank collapsing, things just started getting worse and worse and worse. And as the years progressed, big buyers, not just governments but enterprises as well, started thinking, how can we spend money more intelligently? And so a couple of the people we ran trials with in the university, they came back and said, look, we have these problems with security services, there's a monopolist. For insurance, we have this duopoly, what can you do about that? For our painting contractors, our boiler repair service, every sector you look at, there are monopolies and oligopolies in play, because that's the way to make money. You corner an area of the market and you dominate it and you push up prices. And then you stick your elbows out and you protect that area of the market you've got a hold of. So it's up to the buyer, whoever's devising the mechanism to go to market and buy these goods or services, to respond with a smart mechanism. So it's a battle of wits at that point. And what we're doing is we're now giving the tools to buyers to combat market abuses. So I'll jump into the demo. And so how to solve it? The demo. What we're doing is kind of I suppose it's an evaluation engine for smarter markets. So it can seem, it's not all bells and whistles. But if you're creating a competition, let's say it's for vehicle fleet, and in this case, what you get is if it's for, let's say, a council, and they might have lots of different vehicles in the price schedule. Now, if I was to open up this price schedule, oh, you can't see it. Oh, sorry, right. Sorry. I'll have to. You got it? Okay. Sorry about that. So, what's the competition? Now, this is an example of the first competition we did a few years back. It was only about 6 or 7 million euros, but 6 or 7 million euros to some of those businesses was big bucks, and some of them might be, if you're supplying minibuses or golf carts or something small, you might be the best in the region at those, and you really want to keep the competition open so you can bid on those small contracts. But some big providers, they want everything. They're saying, here's my bids on all 16 contracts. What we do is we let the big guys play to their strengths, so they can offer bids on all of these and offer tiered discount structure subject to winning more contracts. But the small guys can focus in on the contracts they really want too. And we have the evaluation engine to work out what's the best way to combine those together. So the starting point for a buyer is their spreadsheet, and that's what they normally just throw out to the market, is give me prices for these guys. But what we do is we let them upload that into our tool, so and generate what we call a smarter spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet that'll just capture more information. So what it'll do, it'll just add sheets to this worksheets where they can define bundles, they can define tiered conditional discounts, they can also add in capacity constraints. Remember, for the small guys, they're not necessarily interested in offering conditional discounts. What they want to say is, look, I can bid on the medium tipping trucks, the small ones and the large ones, but I can only do 2 of those 3. And if you allow them to submit those capacity constraints, well, then you'll actually get bids on all those 3 contracts instead of them picking 2 and just aiming at those. So what we do is we let them convert that spreadsheet to a smarter one and distribute it. So this could be through their e-tendering tool, or it might be via email. Lots of buyers just send out their RFPs and their bidding sheets via email. Now, when you get all that data back, normally there's a headache for buyers. They have this, what they call the evaluation problem. Sometimes this takes them weeks, especially in some domains like transportation, and where buyers are saying, here's my bids on 27 routes, I've only got 8 cars, don't award me any routes that overlap time-wise, too many routes that overlap time-wise, here are my conditional discounts. It just gets very complex very quickly for some of these buyers. So what we let them do is, just because we've now constructed these bidding sheets in a known structured format, we can just let them upload them all and move to one-click evaluation. So this is, to some of the buyers, this is manna from heaven. So to many of our customers, this is the part they're most impressed by, is that something that might have taken them a few weeks to reason about, now that it's just, okay, here's what it would have cost you if you're just taking in the bids on those individual contracts alone. You'd be paying, in this case, £12 million. But when you factor in all of those bundles and tiered discounts and so on, then you're driving a lot of efficiencies through the system here. And typically in between 5 and 15%, but can be as much as 25% in some domains like transportation. But you can also control the outcome. So I won't go into a scenario analysis here, but you can impose business constraints in the outcome. Let's say you know there's problems in the trucking sector and there's one monopolist who's trying to push out, let's say a company like my dad's, and they're just trying to squeeze them out, and you want to award at most 4 of those 5 truck contracts to any one vendor. You can start to be strategic about how you're now making these awards. So it's really putting a lot more power in the hands of these buyers, and I think the procurement function has always been looked on as just purely process driven within enterprises and government bodies. But now when they're going to their CFO or CEO and they're saying, look, what kind of an outcome do you want? We can constrain this outcome to suit our business needs and manage long-term sustainability within this market. So that procurement function has suddenly become much more strategic, of much greater strategic value within the organisation. So that's our software, and we're about 15-16 months on the road now. We've built up a client list of 9 public bodies and enterprise customers, and we're embarking on a Series A round of funding very shortly. So if you're interested, please come up and talk to me. Thank you very much. Yeah, so if there's time for Q&A, if anyone's questions.
So you said government and enterprise. Are there particular sweet spots, or just?
Good question. Yeah, so the more complex the spend event, the greater the percentage savings. So when you look at, say, our first US-based customers, UN headquarters, they have some huge events. We did an event for Department of Foreign Affairs in Dublin for air transportation, and UN spends 400 times more on air courier services than Dublin. So the percentage savings just inflate. But sectors like transportation, print and packaging, equipment, insurance services, there's just so many. It's anywhere where you're dealing with a multitude of vendors, and some vendors are strong in one niche category and others are more general. Then when you want to get the balance right, and you don't want to be trying to impose an outcome on the system and defining lots that don't suit the market, you just define everything at a granular level. Keep those line items small and let the market decide.
Do companies like automobile companies use it to procure suppliers and things like that?
Speaking to the mic.
Oh, sorry. The question was, would automobile companies, we're actually talking to a couple of automobile companies. Yeah, it would be perfect for some of them with all the parts and all the suppliers they deal with. It's ideal.
So just to follow up, I mean, there have been like these e-marketplaces like Ariba and whatnot. How does this compare with that? So, disrupting something? You're replacing something?
Yeah, it's like a layer of intelligence on top of that market. So if you took any of those e-markets, they typically look at each product in isolation, and we're putting together the connections across products. So if suppliers want to talk about, well, we do this product range, and it's 7 of those products you're looking for, and if we get multiple products, we'll we'll share the benefits. Those marketplaces tend to be, itemized, and you're diluting your spending power when you split your demand into multiple too many contracts. But then you regain that market power when you're inviting combination bids. So it's all about regaining that power.
Just 2 aspects not clear from your demo. How do you deal if you have multi-currency situations? How do you deal with that? And number 2, if one offer expires March 31, the other offer expires April 30th, May 15. Just clarify what start and ends mean, please.
Oh, it's not. Sorry, the start and end date is when the competition opens and when the competition closes. So that's the final closing date for our bids. So everyone has the same closing date for bids. Multi-currency situations. Well, all the competitions we've run, you define the currency in advance. So all bids must be in euros, pounds, or dollars, and that resolves that. Yes.
Optimizing transportation routes versus optimizing where from whom I'm going to buy different cars and trucks are two different kind of optimization models. Do you have different models, or do you do a new model for every client?
This isn't. So when you're optimizing transportation, there's two stages to the transport optimization. There's optimizing the configuration of contracts you award to vendors, and then there's dispatch optimization when after the contracts are awarded. So as orders are unfolding, you have your trucks located in different you're reactive, so it's a different optimization model. After, but we only deal with the procurement phase when you're looking to put in place the best contracts you can put in place. After that point, you then have to model what we call stochasticity, the uncertainty of demand, and how order fulfillment is required during the contract, and that's a different optimization model altogether.
Okay.
Time for one more. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.